At Christmas, my parents turned my 11-year-old daughter away at the door. They told her there wasn't enough space. So she walked home alone in the dark, carrying every gift she had brought, while every house she passed was full of light, laughter, and people who wanted each other. She tried to make dinner for herself when she got home, burned it, then sat quietly at the table, still wearing her coat, like she didn't deserve to take up space anywhere, not even in her own house. When I found out, I didn't scream. I didn't drive over there and make a scene. I did something else. And 5 hours later, everything they thought they owned, their house, their power, their sense of control, started slipping through their fingers. I got home late on Christmas night, already bracing myself for the quiet. Lucy was supposed to be at my parents' house. Big dinner, cousins everywhere, the kind of Christmas she'd been counting down to for weeks. She'd talked about it like it was a once-in-a-lifetime event. Cookies, games, sleeping bags on the living room floor. I'd dropped her off that afternoon and watched her skip up the walkway with her gift bag swinging against her legs. So when I unlocked my door, I was expecting an empty house. What I wasn't expecting was the smell. Burnt. Not the harmless kind, like toast forgotten for a minute too long. This was heavier, sharper. The smell of someone trying very hard to make something special and getting it wrong. My hand froze on the light switch. "Lucy," I called, already knowing something was off. "In the kitchen," she answered. Her voice came too quickly, too steady. I stepped inside and saw the pan first, blackened, abandoned on the stove. Then the plate on the table, a single one, with crumbs scattered around it in careful little arcs, like someone had been moving quietly, trying not to make noise. And then I saw her shoes. Lucy's sneakers were by the door, lined up perfectly. Her coat was draped over the chair, sleeves folded inward like arms hugging themselves. My chest tightened. She was sitting at the kitchen table in the same dress I'd dropped her off in earlier. Her shoulders were pulled in, her back curved slightly forward, as if she was trying to take up less space in her own house. She wasn't crying. That scared me more than anything else. "You're supposed to be at Grandma and Grandpa's," I said carefully. "I know," she said. Her tone was flat, practiced, like she'd rehearsed the sentence until it didn't hurt as much. "Why are you here?" She stared at the edge of her plate for a moment before answering. "They turned me away." I waited for my brain to reject the words, to rearrange them into something that made sense. "Turned you away?" I repeated. "At the door?" She nodded. "They said there wasn't enough space." "Space? For what?" She looked up at me then, and there was something in her eyes I hadn't seen before. Resignation, quiet and heavy. For me. I noticed the gifts then. Every single one of them was lined up by the entryway, bags upright, tags still attached, tissue paper fluffed and untouched, like she couldn't stand the idea of them looking messy. My throat closed. "Why are the gifts here?" I asked. "They didn't want them," she said. "They said to take them back." Cold spread through my chest. "They told you to carry them home?" She nodded once. I sat down across from her, forcing myself to keep my voice steady. "Why didn't you call me?" Her fingers tightened around the edge of the plate. "My phone died." "And theirs?" I asked. She said quietly. "Grandma said it would just make it harder. Grandpa said, he said I should just walk home. Because it's not far." Not far. Not far when you're an adult who knows the neighborhood. Not far when you're not carrying bags that dig into your hands. Not far when it's not Christmas night and every house you pass is glowing with people inside. "How long did it take you?" I asked. "Maybe 20 minutes. I got lost at first. We always drive." Something sharp lodged under my ribs and stayed there. I glanced at the stove again. "You tried to cook?" Her cheeks flushed. "I got hungry, and I wanted it to feel like Christmas." She rushed the next words out like she was afraid I'd be angry. "I watched a video. I tried. It just burned. It's okay." The fact that she was trying to reassure me, that she thought she was the problem, made my throat ache. I stood, opened the window to clear the smell, then pulled out the chair beside her and sat down. "Start from the beginning," I said gently. She took a shaky breath. "You dropped me off, And I went right up like you said, she began. Grandma opened the door and looked surprised, like she forgot I was coming. I clenched my jaw. Aunt Teresa was there. She said, "Oh," like she didn't know what to do. Grandma said the house was full. Not enough chairs. "What about your cousins?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "They were inside," Lucy whispered. "They could see me." She hesitated, then added. Caleb laughed and said my dress looked like a curtain. I felt my hands curl into fists. "And nobody stopped him?" She shook her head. "Grandpa said not to start drama." A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Right. Because letting an 11-year-old inside on Christmas would have been the real problem. Lucy's voice dropped. "I tried to give Grandma her gift. The one I made." My eyes snapped back to her. "She didn't take it," Lucy said, tears finally spilling over. She said, "Not now." I slid my arm around her shoulders and pulled her close. She leaned into me immediately, like she'd been holding herself upright on willpower alone. "I'm sorry," she whispered into my sweater. "I ruined Christmas." "No," I said, steady and certain. "You didn't." As I held her there in the quiet kitchen, something inside me settled into place. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to act. And I already knew. This night wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Lucy fell asleep curled against my side on the couch, her head tucked under my chin like she was afraid the house might disappear if she let go. I stayed awake, staring at the dark ceiling, replaying her words until they carved grooves into my thoughts. There wasn't enough space. The phrase kept echoing, hollow and false. At some point near midnight, I gently shifted Lucy onto the couch cushions and tucked a blanket around her. She murmured something in her sleep, nonsense syllables, half-formed dreams, and then went still. I stood in the kitchen, looking at the burnt pan again. It wasn't the mess that got to me. It was the effort. The fact that she'd watched a video, followed steps, tried to create something warm and familiar in an empty house because she didn't want to feel alone. I washed the pan slowly, deliberately, as if speed might turn into rage if I wasn't careful. When I finished, I lined Lucy's gifts back up by the door exactly how she'd left them. I didn't move them. I didn't put them away. I wanted to remember what it looked like when a child brought love somewhere it wasn't wanted. Morning came gray and brittle. Lucy woke quietly, sitting up and rubbing her eyes like she was already bracing herself for something. She looked around the room, then at me, her expression cautious. "Are you mad?" she asked. "No," I said immediately. "I'm not mad at you. Not even a little." She nodded, but I could see she didn't fully believe it. Shame doesn't dissolve just because someone tells it to leave. I made hot chocolate, real cocoa, not the powdered kind, extra marshmallows. This wasn't a morning for moderation. We sat at the table together, steam rising between us. "Can I ask you something?" Lucy said. "Always." She hesitated. "Did I do something wrong? Like, before? Maybe I said something and didn't realize?" The question landed like a weight on my chest. "No," I said firmly. "You showed up. You were polite. You brought gifts. That's it. That's the whole list." She stared into her mug. "Then why didn't they want me there?" "Because they didn't know how to love anyone who wasn't easy. Because they confuse control with care. Because they've always needed someone to feel smaller so they can feel bigger." But I didn't say any of that. "Some adults make bad choices," I said instead. "And sometimes those choices hurt people who don't deserve it." Lucy nodded slowly, absorbing the words like she was testing their weight. My phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't expected to see that morning. "Evelyn," Lucy noticed instantly. Her whole face changed, lighting up with relief and hope tangled together. "Can we answer?" she asked. "Of course." I put the call on speaker. "Marianne," Evelyn said without preamble. Her voice was sharp but steady. "Put me where I can see you." I switched to video. Evelyn's face filled the screen, glasses perched low on her nose, eyes already scanning. Lucy leaned closer to the phone like it was a window she could step through. "Merry Christmas, Grandma Evelyn," Lucy said, trying too hard to sound normal. Evelyn's expression softened immediately. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart." Lucy smiled. It wobbled. Then the tears came anyway. Quiet, stubborn tears she tried to wipe away before anyone could comment. Evelyn didn't miss a thing. "What happened?" she asked, calm but edged with steel. Lucy glanced at me, panic flashing across her face. "Don't get anyone in trouble." "They wouldn't let me in," Lucy whispered. Evelyn went very still. "Who?" she asked. "Grandma and Grandpa," Lucy said. "They said there wasn't space." "And the gifts?" Evelyn asked. Lucy's lip trembled. "They didn't want them." Evelyn closed her eyes for one brief moment. When she opened them again, something had shifted. "You listened to me," she said, looking straight at Lucy. "You did nothing wrong. Nothing. You were polite. You brought gifts. You showed up. That is all anyone can ask of a child." Lucy made a small sound, like she was trying not to fall apart. Evelyn's gaze flicked to me. "I gave them that house so they'd have space for family," she said quietly. "Space." I stayed silent. This wasn't my moment to steer. "And they used that space," Evelyn continued, her voice sharpening, "to turn a child away at the door." My stomach tightened. "I won't allow it," she said. "Evelyn," I started. "No," she cut in. "My legs hurt. That's all. My mind works just fine, and I know exactly what I'm doing." She turned back to Lucy. "Finish your cocoa, and next Christmas, you'll be where you belong." Lucy nodded, eyes wide. We ended the call a minute later. Lucy looked at me, uncertain. "Is she mad?" "She's mad at the right people," I said. That afternoon, Lucy curled up with a book, trying to act normal. I tried to do the same. But beneath the surface of the day, something was already moving. Quietly, deliberately. And my parents had no idea how fast the ground beneath them was starting to shift. Lucy fell asleep early that night, exhaustion finally pulling her under. Not the peaceful kind. Her sleep was shallow. One arm curled protectively around herself like she was guarding something invisible. I stayed awake. I cleaned the kitchen again even though it was already clean. I folded laundry that didn't need folding. I checked the locks twice, then a third time. When your child has been turned away once, the world stops feeling like something you can trust. It was almost midnight when my phone rang. I knew who it was before I looked. "Judith," I answered. "What did you do?" she demanded. "No hello." "No, is Lucy okay?" Just panic sharpened into anger. "What are you talking about?" I said. "Don't play dumb," she snapped. "Evelyn called us. On Christmas. She's saying the house isn't ours. She's saying we have to move." I leaned against the counter, the burnt pan flashing through my mind like a still image. "I don't know what she told you," I said carefully, "but I didn't plan anything." "Oh, please," Judith hissed. "You've been circling her like a vulture. You've always been jealous. You've always wanted what we have." Something inside me went cold and clean. "My daughter came home alone tonight," I said quietly. "She was turned away at your door. She walked home in the dark carrying gifts you refused to take." There was a pause, just long enough for hope to flicker and die. "Don't change the subject," Judith said. "We didn't have enough chairs, and she was fine." "She asked to use your phone," I said. "You said no." "You're raising her to be dramatic," Judith snapped. "Just like you." I closed my eyes. "You excluded a child," I said. "On Christmas." "You should have kept her with you," Judith shot back. "You're the one who abandoned her." The audacity stole my breath. Then she said it. Casual, almost relieved. "We should have excluded you a long time ago." The words sat there, naked and ugly. "You're not going to rewrite what you did," I said. Judith laughed. A sharp, brittle sound. "You think you've won? You think Evelyn's stable? We'll handle her." The line went dead. I stood in the quiet kitchen, phone still pressed to my ear, staring at the dark window like it might answer me back. "We'll handle her." Evelyn had said she was going to undo something. My mother sounded terrified. Those two facts collided in my chest and stuck. I checked on Lucy. She slept on her side now, face half buried in the pillow, tear tracks faint but still there. I brushed her hair back gently. "I've got you," I whispered, even though she couldn't hear it. The next morning, I called Evelyn. No answer. I waited 5 minutes, called again. Nothing. That alone wouldn't have panicked me. Evelyn treated her phone like an optional accessory. Sometimes she forgot it existed. But my stomach didn't believe the innocent explanation. Lucy padded into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. Did Grandma Evelyn call? Not yet, I said lightly. Her mouth tightened. Is she mad at me? No, I said immediately. She's not mad at you. Not at all. Lucy nodded, but the doubt lingered. Shame has a way of clinging. We're going to see her, I said. We'll bring the cocoa mix she likes. Lucy's face softened. Okay. The drive to Maple Ridge Apartments was quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears. I knocked, waited, knocked again. No answer. I called her phone from the hallway. Still nothing. Maybe she's sleeping, Lucy offered. Maybe, I said, already reaching for my keys. Evelyn had given me a spare long ago. Her definition of an emergency included if I don't answer and you get worried. The door opened. The apartment was wrong immediately. Too quiet. Not old person napping quiet. Empty quiet. I stepped inside, calling her name. No response. Then I saw what was missing. Her wheelchair wasn't by the wall. The blanket she used every night was gone. The small overnight bag she kept by the door. Gone. Lucy's voice came from behind me, small and careful. Where is she? I don't know, I said, and my voice didn't sound like mine. I stepped back into the hallway and knocked on the neighbor's door across the hall. She opened it wearing a robe, concern already etched into her face. Oh, honey, she said, your mother was here. My heart dropped. When? I asked. Early, real early. They had a car waiting. Did Evelyn go with them willingly? I asked. The neighbor hesitated. She didn't look happy. That was all I needed to hear. I thanked her, because apparently that's who I am, and closed the door. Lucy stood gripping the cocoa mix box like it was an anchor. We're going to find her, I said. She's alive. She's okay. I didn't know that for sure. But sometimes, when you're in the middle of a story like this, all you can do is keep moving forward and trust that staying with the truth will matter in the end. And if you are too, don't look away yet. Lucy suggested it before I could. Maybe they took her to their house, she said quietly, eyes fixed on the cocoa mix box in her hands. It was the first sensible idea spoken since we'd walked into Evelyn's empty apartment. Okay, I said. Let's try there. The drive felt longer than it should have. Every red light scraped against my nerves. I checked my mirrors constantly, like the world had shifted into something less safe, and I hadn't been given the rules yet. Lucy sat very still in the passenger seat. Too still. The kind of still kids get when they're trying not to make things worse by existing. When we pulled into my parents' driveway, my stomach dropped. Their house looked exactly the same. Lights on, curtains drawn, a wreath on the door. Normal. Warm. Like nothing was wrong. I parked crooked and didn't bother fixing it. I knocked once. Then again, harder. The door opened almost immediately. Judith stood there like she'd been waiting for me, her expression already sharpened into defense. Where is Evelyn? I asked. Lower your voice, she said. I stared at her. Where is Evelyn? She's fine, Judith snapped. You're not barging in here to upset her. I'm not here to argue, I said, my voice doing that cold thing it does when I'm trying not to explode in front of my child. I'm here to see my grandmother. Judith stepped into the doorway, blocking it with her body like a bouncer. After what you did, I didn't do anything, I said, except come home to my daughter sitting alone with burned food because you wouldn't let her inside. Don't start, she hissed. I'm not starting, I said. I'm finishing. Lucy stood behind me, very quiet. Judith glanced at her for half a second, then looked away like eye contact might make her feel something she didn't want to examine. Your grandmother is resting, she said. She doesn't need your drama. Then let her tell me that, I said. Let me hear it from her. No, just one word. Flat final. That was the moment everything changed. Not because I expected Judith to be reasonable. I'd known her my whole life. But because she wasn't just arguing anymore. She was blocking me from even seeing Evelyn. That wasn't family conflict. That was control. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. Judith's eyes widened. Are you serious? Yes, I said and dialed. I'm serious. She made a sound like I was embarrassing her, which was almost funny, considering how many years she'd spent perfecting that art on me. I told the dispatcher exactly what I knew. No theories, no emotions, just facts. My grandmother was missing from her home. Her mobility equipment and belongings were gone. My mother had taken her early that morning, and my family was refusing to let me confirm she was okay or speak to her. Lucy's hand slid into mine while we waited. Small, cold, trusting. When the officers arrived, Judith's entire posture changed. "Oh, good," she said brightly, like this was a neighborhood meeting. "There's been a misunderstanding. We need to see your grandmother," one of the officers said. "She's resting. We still need to see her." Same tone, calm, not negotiable. Judith stalled just long enough to make my heart slam against my ribs. Then she stepped aside like she was being personally oppressed. Evelyn was in the back room. She sat in her wheelchair, a blanket across her lap, her eyes sharp and alert. The second she saw me, something in my chest unclenched so hard it almost hurt. Lucy made a small sound and moved forward before I could stop her. Evelyn reached out and took Lucy's hand like she'd been waiting for that exact proof of life. "There you are," Evelyn said. Lucy nodded, tears already forming. "I thought you were mad." Evelyn's eyes flashed. "I'm mad at the right people." One of the officers crouched slightly. "Ma'am, are you okay? Are you here because you want to be?" "No," Evelyn said without hesitation. Judith jumped in. "She's confused." "If you interrupt me again," Evelyn said calmly, "I'm adding it to the list." The officer looked back at Evelyn. "Do you want to leave?" "Yes," she said. "Now." Judith's mouth opened, then closed. It was like watching someone realize their favorite puppet had learned how to cut strings. The officers didn't lecture anyone. They didn't raise their voices. They simply made space. I helped Evelyn into my car. Lucy climbed in beside her without being asked, and held her hand like she was anchoring her to the planet. As we pulled away, Evelyn looked at me. "Call my lawyer," she said. I nodded. I didn't know exactly what was coming next. But for the first time since Christmas night, I knew one thing for sure. They were no longer in control. Evelyn's lawyer agreed to see us that afternoon. Not tomorrow, not after the holidays. That afternoon. The office sat above a bakery that smelled like cinnamon and sugar, the kind of place that made everything feel deceptively normal. Lucy squeezed Evelyn's hand as we rode the elevator up, like she was afraid someone might step in and take her away again. The lawyer's name was Andrew Whitlock. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. He didn't need to. He looked at Evelyn first. "Are you comfortable?" he asked. "As I ever am," she said dryly. "Let's not drag this out." He nodded and turned to me. "I'm going to explain what your family has been calling a gift." He slid a folder across the desk. "The house your parents live in," he said, "is not in their names." My stomach dropped. "It's owned by Evelyn's living trust," he continued. "Your parents were listed as beneficiaries, meaning they were set to receive it after Evelyn passes. Until then, they have permission to live there. Nothing more." Evelyn snorted. "They've been acting like it already belongs to them." "They've been acting like a lot of things," Whitlock said calmly. Lucy's grip tightened on Evelyn's hand. "So they can't just keep her?" I asked. "No," he said. "And they can't stop her from leaving. What they did this morning was a serious overstep." Evelyn leaned forward slightly. "Good, because I want it undone." Whitlock didn't blink. "We can change beneficiaries. Today. We can also revise how other assets are distributed." "Everything?" Evelyn asked. "Yes," he said. "Savings, accounts, all of it." I felt dizzy. Lucy looked up at Evelyn, uncertain. "Does that mean you're in trouble because of me?" Evelyn turned to her immediately. "No, sweetheart. It means people are finally facing consequences for their choices." Whitlock asked Evelyn a few questions. Straightforward ones. Did she understand what she was signing? Was anyone pressuring her? Did she feel safe? Evelyn answered like she was personally offended the questions existed. Then he printed the documents. The sound of the printer filled the room, steady and final. Evelyn signed with a firm hand, initialed every page, witnesses signed. And just like that, the names my parents thought were permanent weren't. Mine replaced them. Lucy's future appeared in ink right beside it. When it was done, Evelyn sat back in her chair. "They don't get a reward for turning a child away at the door," she said simply. Whitlock nodded. "I'll also draft paperwork to restrict contact. They won't be able to interfere with you again." "Good," Evelyn said. "Start the process to get them out of the house." My breath caught. He nodded again, already making notes. "It won't be instant, but it will be official." When we left the office, Lucy leaned against Evelyn's side, exhausted. The elevator ride down felt different than the ride up. Lighter, somehow, even with the weight of what we'd just done. That night, Evelyn stayed with us. We set up the guest room. Lucy insisted on sleeping on the floor beside her bed, just in case. I didn't argue. My phone buzzed nonstop. Missed calls, voicemails, texts that swung wildly between rage, disbelief, and sudden, frantic politeness. I didn't answer. Not that night. Not the next morning either. Judith finally left a voicemail that cracked through the noise. "You think you've won," she said, voice shaking with fury. "You've poisoned her against us. You've always been like this. Always tearing the family apart." I deleted it without replying. Lucy watched me carefully as I put the phone down. "They're mad, aren't they?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "They are." She nodded slowly. "But they were mad before, too." I looked at her. She shrugged. "Just quieter." That night, Lucy laughed for the first time since Christmas. It wasn't loud. It didn't last long, but it was real. Evelyn watched her from the couch, eyes sharp and thoughtful. "They thought space was something they could hoard," she said. "Turns out it was the one thing they never knew how to share." I didn't know what the next few weeks would bring. Eviction notices, court dates, silence, more noise. But I knew this much. The door they'd closed on my child had started something they couldn't stop. And the paper cuts were only the beginning. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It came in waves, quiet at first, then loud, then quiet again in a way that felt more dangerous than noise. The first official envelope showed up 3 days later. Heavy paper. Legal language. Evelyn read it at the kitchen table with her glasses low on her nose while Lucy hovered nearby, pretending to be absorbed in a coloring book. "Eviction notice?" Lucy asked carefully. Evelyn didn't look up. "Eventually," she said. "Right now, it's more like a reminder that actions have timelines." Lucy considered that. "Like consequences with a calendar." Evelyn smiled. "Exactly." Judith's calls stopped after that. Replaced by emails. Long ones. Carefully worded as if politeness could rewrite reality. Frank's messages were shorter. Defensive. Confused. He asked what he'd done to deserve this. I didn't respond. Silence, it turns out, is a kind of boundary that doesn't invite negotiation. Lucy went back to school the following Monday. I walked her to the bus stop even though she'd been doing it alone for years. She didn't comment on it, just slipped her hand into mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. That afternoon, her teacher called. Nothing dramatic, just a check-in. "She's quieter than usual," she said gently. "Not withdrawn exactly, just careful." Careful. The word lodged in my chest. That night, Lucy sat on the floor of her room organizing her art supplies into neat little rows. Too neat. "Do you want to talk about school?" I asked. She shrugged. "Everyone asked what I got for Christmas." I waited. "I said I got cocoa mix," she added. "Which isn't a lie." "No," I said. "It's not." She hesitated. Am I allowed to be mad? The question surprised me. "Yes," I said immediately. "You're allowed to be mad. You're allowed to be sad. You're allowed to feel however you feel." She nodded slowly, like she was committing that to memory. "I think I'm mad at the house," she said after a moment. "The house?" "Yeah, because it looked warm. And it had lights. And it still didn't want me." Evelyn, who'd been listening from the doorway, stepped in. "Houses don't decide who belongs," she said. "People do. And sometimes people get it wrong." Lucy thought about that. Then maybe houses shouldn't get to keep people who don't know how to use them right. Evelyn laughed, a short, sharp sound. You might be onto something. The paperwork moved faster than I expected. Whitlock called to explain timelines, next steps, legal phrasing that translated into one simple truth. My parents' sense of permanence was evaporating. They were still in the house, still sleeping in the same beds, still drinking coffee in the same kitchen. But they no longer owned the future they thought was guaranteed. One afternoon, I found Evelyn standing by the window, watching the street. Do you regret it? I asked quietly. She didn't turn around. I regret not seeing it sooner. That night, Judith showed up at our door. I hadn't been expecting it, but I wasn't surprised either. She didn't knock. She rang the bell. Twice. Then again. I opened the door enough to block the frame. Lucy froze in the living room. Judith's eyes flicked past me immediately, searching. You can't keep her from me, she said. I'm not, I replied. You did that yourself. Her mouth tightened. We made mistakes. You made choices, I said. There's a difference. I'm her grandmother, Judith snapped. I have rights. No, Evelyn said from behind me. You had privileges. You lost them. Judith turned, startled. For a brief moment, I saw fear flash across her face. You turned a child away? Evelyn continued. Then you took me without consent. You don't get to call that family. Judith's voice dropped. You're ruining us. Evelyn stepped forward. No, I'm correcting you. Judith stared at Lucy, who stood very still, watching. I said I was sorry. Judith tried. Lucy spoke before I could stop her. You didn't say it to me, she said. The silence that followed was absolute. Judith swallowed. I didn't know what to say. Lucy nodded. That's okay. I know what to say now. Judith waited. Lucy took a breath. I don't want to see you anymore. It wasn't angry. It wasn't loud. It was final. Judith left without another word. That night, Lucy slept through until morning for the first time since Christmas. Evelyn watched her from the doorway, thoughtful. Children learn faster than adults, she said. They know when something isn't safe. The week stretched on. The house on Old Pine Crescent stayed lit at night. But something fundamental had shifted. For the first time, it wasn't holding power. It was holding time. And time, finally, was on our side. Silence settled into our house in a way I didn't expect. Not the sharp, brittle silence that follows an argument, but something wider, softer, like space being cleared. Lucy started filling it. Not all at once, not loudly, just in small, deliberate ways. She began humming again while she brushed her teeth. She left her shoes kicked off instead of lined up perfectly by the door. One afternoon, I noticed she'd taped one of her drawings to the fridge without asking first. It was a picture of 3 figures holding hands, one tall, one small, one with a cane and a fierce smile. She caught me looking at it and shrugged. It didn't feel wrong. That sentence stayed with me. At school, things shifted too. Her teacher emailed again, this time with a different tone. She spoke up today, she wrote, corrected another student who interrupted her, calmly. Lucy read the email over my shoulder. I wasn't mean, she said quickly. I just didn't move out of the way. That's not mean, I said. That's existing. She smiled at that. Evelyn's health stabilized once she was with us. Not magically. Pain doesn't disappear because justice shows up. But she slept better, ate better, laughed more. One evening, as I helped her with her medication, she said, "They thought being family meant access." She shook her head. It doesn't. It means responsibility. The legal process continued in the background, quiet but relentless. Whitlock updated us weekly. Notices delivered. Deadlines set. Responses ignored or mishandled by my parents, who were finally learning what happens when outrage replaces preparation. They still think this is about punishment, Whitlock said during one call. They don't understand it's about correction. That misunderstanding costs them time, and time, in legal matters, is expensive. Judith tried once more. This time, not in person. A letter arrived, handwritten, neat. Lucy watched me open it. It's from her, she said. Yes. Do I have to read it? No, I said. You don't owe anyone access to your feelings. Lucy nodded. Okay. I read it alone later. It was full of words like family, miscommunication, intentions. There was one apology buried in the middle, vague enough to slide past accountability. I'm sorry if you felt hurt. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer I rarely opened. Some things don't deserve space on the fridge. That weekend, Lucy asked if we could bake cookies. Like, really bake them, she said. Not just watch a video. We did. Flour everywhere. Burnt edges. Laughing when the smoke alarm chirped instead of panicking. When we were done, Lucy packed a few into a container. For Grandma Evelyn, she said, because she lets me make messes. Evelyn accepted them like they were medals. That night, after Lucy went to bed, Evelyn sat beside me on the couch. You know, she said, a lot of people think justice has to be loud to be real. I nodded. But sometimes, she continued, it's just the quiet removal of things that were never earned. I thought of the house on Old Pine Crescent, still standing, still full of furniture, just emptier in the ways that mattered. Lucy called from her room then. Mom? Yes. Can you leave the hallway light on? Of course. She hesitated. I like knowing someone's there. I'm here, I said. Always. Later, scrolling aimlessly on my phone, I caught myself pausing on stories. Other people, other families, other quiet moments that felt familiar in a way I hadn't expected. It occurred to me that sometimes hearing one story helps someone else recognize their own. And sometimes, staying a little longer is how you learn what safety actually sounds like. Up ahead, things were still moving. Final notices. Last chances. The kind of endings that don't announce themselves until they've already arrived. But for the first time, I wasn't bracing for impact. I was watching Lucy become someone who knew she didn't have to shrink to stay. The notice arrived on a Tuesday. No drama, no raised voices. Just an envelope slid through the mail slot at Old Pine Crescent that finally made everything real. Whitlock called an hour later. They've been given a move-out timeline, he said. Shorter than they expected. I closed my eyes. Are they fighting it? I asked. They tried, he replied. But fighting requires leverage. They don't have any. When I hung up, Lucy was sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, working on a puzzle. She looked up at my face and read it instantly. Is it happening? She asked. Yes, I said. It is. She went back to fitting two pieces together. Okay, that was it. No celebration, no questions, just acceptance. I realized then how much she'd already let go. A few days later, Evelyn asked if we could drive past the house. I don't need to go inside, she said. I just want to see it one last time while it still thinks it belongs to them. We went in the afternoon. The driveway was empty. No cars, no lights on behind the curtains. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Ordinary. Like any other structure that had mistaken shelter for entitlement. Evelyn studied it through the windshield. They never understood what I gave them, she said quietly. It wasn't a prize. It was trust. Lucy leaned forward between our seats. Does the house know? Evelyn smiled. Houses don't know things? People do? Lucy nodded. Then I'm glad people don't live there anymore. The words weren't bitter. They were clean. That weekend, the locks were changed. Judith didn't call. Frank didn't write. The silence from them was different now. Thinner, edged with disbelief. Like they were still waiting for someone to tell them this was temporary. A misunderstanding. A pause. It wasn't. Whitlock confirmed that final paperwork was complete. Assets reassigned. Contact restrictions formalized. From here on, he said, they don't get to reach you through anything official. Evelyn thanked him, then added, and if they try unofficially? I'll be ready, he said. Life didn't suddenly become easy. Lucy still startled at raised voices on television. Still hesitated before asking for things she wanted. Still apologized too quickly. But the apologies came less often. One evening, she asked if she could invite a friend over. For a sleepover, she added. But it's okay if it's too much. It's not too much, I said. Who? She smiled. Does it matter? It didn't. That night, while Lucy was busy setting up blankets and whispering secrets in the living room, Evelyn sat at the table with a stack of old photo albums. These are yours, she said, pushing one toward me. I flipped through pictures of a younger version of myself. Careful smiles, stiff posture. You look like you're holding your breath, Lucy observed, peering over my shoulder. I think I was, I said. Evelyn reached out and tapped one photo gently. You don't owe anyone that version of yourself anymore. Neither do you, I thought. The first time Lucy laughed loudly again, it startled all of us. It happened during a board game, completely unplanned. A full, unfiltered laugh that filled the room before she clapped a hand over her mouth in surprise. Then she laughed again. Evelyn laughed with her. I felt something unclench in my chest. Later that night, after her friend had gone home and the house was quiet again, Lucy curled up beside me on the couch. Mom? Yes? Do you think they know they messed up? I considered the question. I think they know something changed, I said. I don't know if they understand why. Lucy thought about that. That's okay. How? Because I do. She rested her head against my arm. Outside, the streetlights flickered on, one by one. Warm squares of light appeared in windows along our block. Inside our house, no one was standing at the door wondering if they were allowed in. And for the first time since Christmas night, the quiet didn't feel like absence. It felt like peace. Spring arrived slowly, like it was checking first to see if it was welcome. The snow thinned along the sidewalks. The mornings grew brighter. Lucy started leaving her jacket unzipped, testing the air with small, hopeful risks. Life didn't reset. It reshaped. Some days were light. Others surprised us with old echoes. Moments when Lucy froze at a raised voice in a grocery store aisle, or when I caught myself over-explaining something that didn't need defense. Healing, it turned out, wasn't a straight line. It was a series of choices made quieter each time. Evelyn settled into a routine with us. Physical therapy twice a week. Tea at the same time every afternoon. She liked sitting near the window where she could watch the street and comment on people's walking posture like it was a competitive sport. That one leans like she's apologizing to the pavement, she'd mutter. Terrible habit. Lucy loved it. They developed their own rhythm. Homework at the table. Evelyn correcting spelling with ruthless precision. Lucy correcting Evelyn's outdated slang with equal confidence. You can't say that anymore, Lucy told her one evening. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Watch me. Lucy laughed. You're going to get canceled. By who? Evelyn replied. I don't have an internet. That laugh again. Full, easy, unchecked. I noticed changes in myself too. I stopped flinching when my phone buzzed. Stopped drafting responses in my head to conversations that never came. Stopped preparing explanations for choices I didn't need to justify. One afternoon, Whitlock called with a final update. It's done, he said. Everything that can be closed is closed. I thanked him and hung up. Lucy looked up from her homework. Is that the end? It's the end of that part, I said. She nodded. Good. We talked more openly then, about what family meant, about boundaries, about how love wasn't measured by proximity or titles, but by consistency. I thought being related meant people had to keep you, Lucy said once. People should want to keep you, I corrected gently. She considered that. I think you want to keep me. Very much, I said. And Grandma Evelyn, she added. Evelyn pretended not to hear, then said, Don't get sentimental. I'll deny everything. The house felt lived in now, not staged, not careful. Shoes scattered, papers stacked, drawings taped to walls without symmetry. One evening, Lucy asked if we could plan next Christmas. It was early, months early, but the request wasn't anxious. Just curious. What do you want it to look like? I asked. She thought for a moment. Quiet, but not lonely. Evelyn chimed in, with good food and terrible music. Lucy grinned. And no doors. I swallowed. No doors, I agreed. Sometimes, late at night, I still wondered if my parents understood what they'd lost. Not the house, not the money, but the chance to be something better. Then I'd look at Lucy asleep down the hall, her door open, light spilling softly into the room, and I'd let the question go. Understanding wasn't required for accountability. One Saturday, Lucy brought home a permission slip for a school presentation. It's about something that changed you, she explained. I want to talk about Christmas. I paused. You don't have to. I know, she said, but I want to. She worked on it for days. Wrote. Crossed things out. Wrote again. The night before she presented, she read it to us. It wasn't angry. It wasn't dramatic. It was honest. When someone shuts a door on you, she read, voice steady, it doesn't mean you're too big. Sometimes it means they were afraid to make room. Evelyn nodded once, solemn. That's a good line. Lucy smiled. I practiced. The next day, she came home lighter. I didn't cry, she said proudly. I'm proud of you, I told her. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the house filled with the soft noise of ordinary life, I realized something important. We weren't waiting for the future anymore. We were already living in it, and it looked nothing like the past we'd left behind. Next Christmas didn't announce itself. It arrived the way good things do, quietly, without asking permission, already sure it belonged. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine. Not overpowering, not staged, just enough to feel warm when you walked in from the cold. Lucy had insisted on decorating the tree herself this year. Not perfectly, not symmetrically. Ornaments clustered where she liked them, not where they were supposed to go. The one she placed last was a simple paper star, folded carefully and slightly uneven. That one goes here, she said, pressing it gently into a branch near the center. Why there? I asked. So I can see it from everywhere. Evelyn watched from the couch, mug in hand. Strategic, she approved. Snow had started falling an hour earlier. Soft, steady, the kind that made the world feel quieter instead of colder. The street outside was lined with glowing windows, but none of them felt distant or exclusive anymore. We weren't looking in. We were inside. Dinner wasn't elaborate. Soup, bread, a pie Lucy and I had made together that morning. The crust was uneven. The filling leaked a little. Lucy declared it perfect anyway. After we ate, she disappeared into her room and came back holding a small box. For both of you, she said. Inside were 2 envelopes. Evelyn opened hers first. It was a drawing. 3 figures standing in a doorway, holding hands. The door was wide open. No walls. No shadows. Lucy had written underneath it in careful block letters. This is what safe looks like. Evelyn cleared her throat. I'll have you know, she said. I don't cry. She dabbed at her eyes anyway. My envelope held a folded note. Thank you for not making me smaller. I pulled Lucy into a hug so fast she laughed. Later, we settled into the living room. A movie played quietly in the background, more atmosphere than focus. Lucy leaned against me, feet tucked under a blanket. Evelyn dozed lightly, her breathing steady, her presence grounding. At some point, Lucy shifted and looked around. Mom, yes? This is my favorite Christmas. I didn't answer right away. I just kissed the top of her head. Outside, someone across the street laughed. A door opened and closed. Life went on. But not for us the way it used to. We didn't talk about Judith or Frank anymore. Their absence had stopped being loud. It had faded into irrelevance, like a chapter you don't reread because you already learned what it was trying to teach you. Lucy had learned something else. She no longer asked if she was allowed to take up space. She simply did. After the movie, she yawned and stood. I'm going to bed. Door open or closed? I asked. She thought for a moment. Open. I left the hallway light on, just like she liked. As I turned back toward the living room, I noticed the paper star glowing softly in the tree lights, exactly where Lucy had placed it, visible from everywhere. Evelyn stirred. You did good, she said quietly. So did you, I replied. She smiled. I just made room. Later that night, after Lucy was asleep and the house had settled into its familiar hum, I stood by the window and watched the snow fall. I thought about the door that had closed on my child a year ago, about how small she'd made herself afterward, about how power had tried to disguise itself as tradition, and about how easily it had fallen apart once it was questioned. Justice, I'd learned, didn't need an audience. It needed follow-through. If you're still here, if this story stayed with you longer than you expected, maybe it's because you've seen a door like that too. or wondered what would happen if someone simply chose not to accept it. Sometimes all it takes is staying long enough to see what opens when you stop knocking. Inside, Lucy shifted in her sleep and sighed, content, unguarded. I turned off the last light and let the quiet settle. This time, it didn't feel like absence. It felt like arrival,